All right, let's make a quick and easy geometry nodes based stone archway that we can control on a curve. We're going to be using all the native vanilla Blender controls to do this, and we'll try to do this thing in under 8 minutes. Let's go. The first thing you're going to need is to go into the preferences add-ons and turn on the add mesh extras. Then you can jump over to pureref.com and get PureRef. This is going to be a big help in storyboarding and getting some reference images in one place. Then once you've got that download installed, you type in something like rock archway, get a few images, figure out an idea, something that you really like, grab that, and then just hover over the PureRef and drop it in. Now these can be scaled, rotated, and so on, so that you can have a good solid reference for a multitude of different images. And of course you can organize them, zoom in, get textures, ideas, and use this as a good floating reference behind Blender. Another thing I want you guys to do is jump over to polyhaven.com. And once you're over here, you can go into the textures, find some rock textures. I'll go back to the main screen. So I just go here and then go down to rock and then start scrolling and find something that you're gonna like. Now I actually pulled up the aerial rocks, so I was not gonna do it the way I want. So we'll just type in rock. And what we're looking for is the aerial rock here. And it's going to be right here, aerial rock 02 or 04. Either one of these look good. Just click on it, grab it on a download. You can do 4K, 1, 2, or whatever. If you've got a slower PC, 1K is going to be fine because the level of detail that we're looking for here is not much. All right, let's make this really easy and as quick as possible while still being informative. So I'm going to pop over to the Geometry Nodes workspace. Doesn't really matter what you grab, just grab a plane. I'm going to be cutting that off anyways because I don't need it. I'm going to drop in an arc and go ahead and connect it. Now I'm going to have the top view here so you can kind of see what I'm doing, and the sweep angle, I'm going to put that to 180 degrees, and then I'm going to come in here and drop an instance on points. Now you don't have anything instance here just yet, and do want to actually go over a couple of things. Let's add a resample curve so we have a little bit of control, and we can already output the count so we have something. I'm going to pin the workspace here, pin the workspace here. So as you see, we've got a count, vertice count if you will. And what this is going to do is give us our shape, and these are going to be how many points and how many instances that we end up having. So if you want to think of it in terms of vertice count and how many rocks, because the count is currently set to 8, we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And now that's going to be how the rocks are, but we're going to add a scale so that we can cover the distance between those rocks. They will kind of clip in a little bit, but it doesn't really matter for this. And we're also going to go over a really quick and effective and almost a cheater way to texture these rocks and not have to go through unwrapping through geometry nodes. So let's go ahead and begin that. And what we want to do now is go ahead and grab the, if you didn't enable it, make sure to enable the mesh extras. So we want to go ahead and grab our rocks, go to mesh and rock generator. You're going to get an operator here. And so you could throw in 8 rocks if you wanted to. I'm actually going to just throw in 4. And so every other rock will be just a little bit different. And you can change a lot of the parameters here if you want to. I think it's important that the detail level isn't too high or too low. As you can see, it's going to look kind of garbagey if you don't. You change the scale on the X and the Y. You can skew it if you wish. And then we can also look at some presets. So sand, fake ocean, river rocks. These really won't work for our purpose because it's going to be... So I'm just going to keep it pretty basic. And I think we could bring this up 1. This is actually going to make it look a lot better. So I'm going to bring the display detail to 3. Now what I want to do with all these rocks selected, I want to just hit M, do a new collection. I'm just going to call this rocks. Very nice and simple. I'm going to drag rocks in. And we can go ahead and plug that in to the instance. And just for now, so we can visualize this, I'm going to hide the rocks. So this is going to need a little bit of scaling and some other work. I think we could rotate this, but it's not going to want to rotate the way I want. So I'm just going to rotate it here, X 90 degrees. And that way I can take up a front view, which is going to look a little better. So one thing I want to do is I want to click on separate children and reset children. And these are all going to be bunched together. And we don't want that because right now, there are rocks inside of rocks. So each one of these instances is going to have 4 rocks in it right now. And if my math is correct, 8 times 4 is going to be 32. That's 32 rocks. We don't need that many. We could add a few more, maybe somewhere between the 10 and the 12 mark is actually going to fill it nicely. So what we do is we come over to the instance on points. We click pick instance. And now we have 1 rock on each instance, which is the ideal thing. Now let's do a random value. I'm actually going to place that over here for a moment because I want to pull out a vector math and I want to get a scale node. I'm going to drop the scale in here and I'm going to go ahead and plug the float value directly into the vector to get my randomization. Now I want to output that so I can just have control over that scale over here. And now you'll see we have our 8 rocks. Whoops. Let's go back to 1, start over. We've got our 8 rocks here. And in order to get these proportionate the way we want, we can change the minimum maximum because it doesn't really look good. So I don't want any rock to be below 0.5, which would kind of even them out a touch. And I don't want any of them to be all the way up. So something like 0.75. That looks pretty good. And now I can increase the count to about the 12, kind of like I was thinking. And that's going to start looking pretty good. And now as I go to kind of mess around with the scale, I can bring that back up. And anything that I get around 0.5, it's going to start touching. So I could just put it to 0.5 and then they'll just all barely be touching each other. So you don't get a whole lot of clipping. Now that's already starting to look pretty good. And I want this to be a nice quick tutorial. So if you went ahead and went over to Polyhaven by chance, then you will get some textures. All right, now, so another thing we can do, and just keep in mind, we're not going to texture through geometry nodes, and it's really not going to get a whole lot more difficult than this. We can switch this to relative, even though we're not really changing a whole lot. Now I want to go ahead and left click, drag, and turn on all these rocks. And I want to spread these out just a touch. Okay, I'm hiding them for some reason. And I'm just going to spread these out just a little bit. Okay, so we've got our 4 rocks here, and I want to add texture. And we're going to just copy over those textures, so it's going to be nice and simple. We don't have to do a whole lot. And where's my screen here? Now, sometimes you got to get up in the corner and hit that maximize button again to get that double line. And so I want to pull up the shader editor. And I'm going to grab the first rock. Doesn't matter which one, really. I have to unpin, create a new material. Now you'll need Node Wrangler enabled. You can hit Control, Shift, and T. Now what that's going to do is it's going to pull this up so you can grab the textures from wherever you downloaded them. And I just downloaded mine and then extracted them right inside of the download folder. So I've got the Aerial Rocks 02 right here. Open up textures, just select these, leave the mouse on top, and hit enter. And switch over to Material Preview under Eevee, and we can take a look at this. And it's not really going to look too good. We're going to have to do a couple of things to this. Now, it doesn't have a UV, so here's the cheat code. Remove that. I'm just going to attach object. You're going to get all this funky stretching because there really is no UV. We're just going to project this via box. So if you start clicking box on all of these, you'll see it starting to kind of clean this up a little bit. And this would be good enough for the level of detail that we're looking for because the actual rock topology isn't too bad. And now that all of that is settled at somewhat of a distance, that really doesn't look too bad. Now this one material is now going to control everything because we're going to shift, right click, select until this is the active object, hit Control L, and I want to link these materials. So now we've technically got a nice box projection, and we've got a setup here that is procedural, it's not destructive. And now we're going to kind of change this a little bit, and I'd like to get a little bit more sparse here. Let's get a little more sparse. I'm going to put in a random attribute, if you will, and we want to create some randomization so all of these don't look like the same exact color. And in order to do that, I'm going to grab a mix color node, and I'm going to drop this in. Okay. And the next thing we're going to do is grab an object info node. This is one of my favorite nodes. A lot you can do with this, but I'm just going to plug this into the factor so we don't have to shift it, because if you check this out the way it is, the factor is kind of going to shift back and forth, and I already changed my stuff here. So this is what you're going to end up with, and it's going to be at 0.5. So your texture is either all the way there on channel A, or you're splitting it between A and B, or it's all the way on B. But we don't want that. We want it controlled by a random value. So that's how we're going to get this. And you can already see we've got something a little more interesting here in the background. So let's get a better look. And in order to switch this and make it just right, I want to bring this down just a touch. And now we've got all these different color rocks. Now this is going to be a float value. So we could put in a float curve and throw in a float curve here and start kind of playing around with how this ends up looking. You can also throw in a color ramp, and the color ramp isn't too bad either. It's just going to be in how you set it up, and you can make it look a little more saturated, make it look a little more rough. You can do all kind of things with this, and I would say if you're getting crazy with it, you could even change the colors up here, and it'll give it a little bit of a variation as well. I'm actually going to stick with the float curve for this one, and there's no wrong way to do this. It's just the results that you're actually looking for is what's important here. And you can play around with the factor here as well. Now that's going to be pretty good. Looks like I can now hide all of these, and I can just run the mouse down, or I can disable that collection completely. And so we don't have to worry about that now. And so now we've got a nice procedural setup. You can still do a lot with this. If you want to change anything, you can output the collection. So you can change collections and demo things. Then if you had a static object, you can also throw in a switch node and get an object info here, which is a slightly different node. And you can run this true and false. If this is not checked, it's going to be the collection. And let's just throw in a random rock. Ooh, I threw in 5 more. I don't want to do that. It does remember, by the way, that operator does remember the last thing you did. And I did it again. Here we go. 3rd time is the charm. And so I'm going to have to bring the operator up and bring that to 1. Very good. Ended up with this kind of fuzzy rock, no big deal. But this is going to be the object that I want here, so I can just teardrop that and hide it. And then if I select this, it's going to end up being the rock, which I'm going to have to turn into an instance. And so you're going to have to do a lot of stuff to make that look good. Not quite as fun. But then you can output the Boolean value, which is just true or false. And now you're switching between two different collections, well, a collection and or an object. And that's going to end up looking pretty decent. And there you go. That's it. Go ahead and smash that like, smash that subscribe, guys. Go check out the Gumroad link. I'm going to put, you've got a boxes add-on you can go grab while it's still gratis. And it's a procedural boxes thing. I'm not going to go over it again. I've gone over it like 3 or 4 times. But you can go grab that and test it out, see how you like it, make suggestions. You can rate it, do whatever you want. See you guys in the next one.